Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to run down the top 10 most submitted books into CGC for grading in the month of January. And as a reminder, I get this data directly from CGC, and this isn't data that you are going to see on any other channel. Some folks might be wondering why it is that I actually do these videos, and part of the reason is because I'm a huge fan of data. Second, I like to know what is actually happening in the world of comics and collectibles. If you think about it, we have a general shortage of data. We don't know how many comics are being printed by publishers. We don't know how many comics are actually being sold because we haven't seen any sales data in a couple of years. And so whenever I have a chance to share with you some data that I have access to, I want to take that opportunity. So hopefully that explains why we're doing this video. With that said, I encourage you to stay tuned because we are going to run it down right now. Number 10 on the list is Venom Lethal Protector issue number 1, published by Marvel Comics in 1993. This comic is the first solo series featuring the incredibly popular Venom. At present, there are more than 21,000 total graded copies of this comic on the census across all labels. There are currently 9,405 Universal 9.8s, which have a 30-day average value of $114. Number 9 is Star Wars issue number 1, published by Marvel Comics in 1977. This comic is the first appearance of several characters, including Luke, Darth Vader, and Princess Leia, just to name a few. There are nearly 17,000 copies of this comic graded by CGC across all labels, but just 829 9.8s. For this reason, the 9.8 commands a pretty hefty price tag. The 30-day average is $3,840. For the sake of comparison, the 9.6 has a 30-day average value of $760 with more than 2,225 copies graded. Number 8 is Wolverine issue number 41. The data around this book is a little light, but I think that the comic that is being submitted in is the Clayton Crane variant. And if you've had a chance to see this book, you kind of sort of might be able to figure out why people are submitting this thing in. It is absolutely gorgeous. Somehow or another, I missed this book when it was released, but I get why people are submitting it. At present, there are 155 copies showing up as graded on the census, but I was unable to find any sales data. Number 7 is the first Wolverine book on the list. This one, Wolverine issue number 1, the limited series from 1982. This comic is Wolverine's first solo series and an always in demand comic. There are more than 27,000 copies of this comic on the CGC census across all labels. Roughly 18% of the blue label copies are a 9.8, which has a 30-day average value of $583, down from the 90-day average of $657. Number 6 is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300. This comic is the first full appearance of Venom and was published by Marvel Comics in 1988. Like several other comics on the list, this book has a massive census count. There are nearly 36,000 copies of this comic across all labels, but there are just 1,549 copies that are a Universal Blue Label 9.8. The 9.8 has a 30-day average value of $3,280, which is nearly flat for the last 90 days. Number 5 is Spider-Gwen Annual Issue number 1. This comic appears to be a Comic Tom 101 exclusive released at the end of last year. The foil cover created by Ralph Grassetti is limited to 3,000 copies. At present, there are a total of 217 copies graded by CGC, which includes 7 9.9s, 209 9.8s, and 1 9.4. At present, I wasn't able to find any sales data, but if this book shows up next month, maybe we'll have some sales data by then. Number 4 is another Wolverine book. This one, Wolverine issue number 1, limited series, facsimile edition. There are currently 194 total copies of this reprint graded by CGC. 191 of those copies are a 9.8, with the remainder being a 9.6. The 9.8 has a 30-day average price of just $60. Number 3 is Secret Wars issue number 8, published by Marvel Comics in 1984. This comic is, of course, the origin of the alien symbiote that later bonds with Eddie Brock to become Venom. There are presently more than 29,000 copies of this comic on the CGC census. Just over 22% of those landed a 9.8 blue label, which has a 30-day average value of $469. Number 2 is Spawn issue number 1. This comic is the first appearance of several characters, including Al Simmons, aka Spawn. There are currently 32,699 copies of this comic graded by CGC across all labels. This includes 11,441 universal 9.8s. Despite having a large census count and a healthy number of 9.8s, this comic's value has been roughly stable for around a year at $156 on average for that 9.8. And the number 1 book is X-Men issue number 1 from the 1990s. This comic is the best-selling comic of all times, yet it has one of the smaller census counts versus some of the books that we've already mentioned thus far. CGC is showing a census count of 20,483 copies across all labels. Because of how the CGC census is set up, we don't know exactly how many copies of each of the 4 covers have been graded. With that said, the Magneto and Wolverine covers tend to command the higher price tags, but both are south of $90 on average. So there we have it. We have reached the end of the countdown, but I want to make mention of 2 additional books. The first one is in the 11th spot and the second is in the 12th spot. In that 11th spot, we have Spider-Boy issue number 1, and in the 12th spot, Batman Off-World issue number 1, but it's specifically the young variant. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, I definitely want to encourage you to give the video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. And I want to encourage you to stay tuned because we are going to be doing a similar countdown for CBCS, something we've been doing for more than a year now. So stay tuned.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yeah. Should you practice art, or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations, synergy and combination.